Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we work on Django apps. We're going to continue on my homeschool application tonight. We're going to specifically focus on dealing with tire kickers in admin tooling and how to filter them out and make the views that I have more useful. So that's the plan. We'll get into some tools and how I'm going to do all that. So hopefully you'll stick around. Before we get into that, though, I do want to let people know that you can stay in touch with me on YouTube or follow me on Twitch here. So please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I also want to thank my patrons who support me financially, and you can do that too if you want to. You can go to patreon.com/mblehman if you're finding the content valuable. But I want to thank Rupert, Andrew, Dragos, Patrick, Eric, Philip, Miguel, and Peter for their contributions. It really helps me put out material related to Django on podcasts and all that other stuff, and just kind of compensates me a bit for my time, which is just a nice little touch too. So thank you all. I appreciate that. All right, what are we going to work on tonight? We're going to deal with tire kickers. And maybe you've never heard the term before, but this is a not an uncommon term. But it's specifically about people, when you're talking about a software as a service, it's about people who like try out the service and then they kind of abandon it and have no plan to come back. And my service has a very generous 60-day free trial for it. So there are people that try it out and decide it's not a good fit for them. But there are some that are more obvious than others that clearly they're coming in there just to poke around. Maybe it's from this stream, maybe it's from other avenues, but they really clearly invest no time into the application and never come back. And so I have some tooling that looks at who has signed up and who's in trialing and all of that sort of stuff. But I want to be able to filter on the people that are like real trials, that are actually trying the app out, and distinguish between both the brand new people that have just signed up that maybe haven't gotten all their data in yet, and the people that are really trialing, and then this third category of tire kickers who are just, there's no chance that, or it's extremely unlikely that they will convert into real paying users. So that's the plan tonight. To go over that, I'll show you my onboarding tooling, what I'm actually doing to track information. I'm trying to avoid tracking too much. Like I don't have any Google Analytics on the site. That's an intentional decision. I'm just not interested in seeing that much information about people. And nor am I interested in giving Google all that information about people who use my site. So the metrics that I do use is actual usage of the application. And so that's what we're going to look into. So I'm going to start up the local web server and we'll fire things up, and I'll show you exactly the kind of problem that I'm facing. I think I have some examples in my local dev database. We might have to create that, but it should be okay. We'll see. It's been a while since I've logged in, so I've got to remember my test account. Did I? Okay, good. So in the user interface of SchoolDesk, which is the homeschooling app that I'm building, there are a couple links up at the top here that no one else sees on the site. If you signed up with SchoolDesk today and became a tire kicker yourself, you would not see these links at the top. They're only available to me as the administrator of the site, and they take me to a couple different places. One of them takes me to the Django admin, which is this one right here, which I've renamed to Office for my app, so that the script kiddies can't find it as easily. And so that's where I would do that stuff, and I'm logged in as an admin user, and I can see that stuff. The other area is this dashboard, which is a small set of custom tools that I've written in order to help me with a couple of different scenarios. And we're not going to get into what these tools are, but we're going to focus our attention on this onboarding funnel. And oh good, there's some data in here. So here's the view that I have, and I can't show you my real onboarding page because it has real people's information, and I just don't want to disclose that stuff. It's none of y'all's business, and I don't think you care anyway. This is representative of the kind of stuff that I see when I'm looking at the production site, and the difference is that this list is a fair bit longer. But it is kind of representative of the behaviors that I see in there. And so what I've got with this onboarding dashboard, and what this thing tells me, is how much usage someone is actually using the tool. If we were to go look at the app, actually we can jump straight to the onboarding flow at any time by going to this start page. There's a set of start steps that I guide people through, and it's they follow along, and I've already completed this, so most of these are going to be not very interesting because it's going to give the messages of you've already finished those steps, because I'm coming back here after an account has been completed. But a new user, after they've signed up, will go through these steps, and it's going to create certain pieces of data. It will create a school year, a grade level, a course, and a task, as you can see. And so if we look at this onboarding information, you can see when the user account is created, and you can see a school year, a grade level, a course, and a task. Logical, right? The other two pieces of information that are critical in order for my homeschooling app to work is a student who's actually going to be in the grade level, and then an enrollment, which is what the piece of information that connects the planning information for the homeschool school year with the student, and basically says you're now enrolled as a third grader in this homeschool. So once all of these pieces of information are filled in, it's a better indicator to me that someone is actually trying out the app. But here's a good example of something I actually see quite often, where this will be zeros across the board. So what we see in this test data of Slack test, Stripe trial, and Notify, these are all things that I've made in my local dev database, but I think they are good representations of what I would call a tire kicker. In fact, the same with this no grade level. If you haven't made at least one of all of these things, it means you're not actually serious about the app. Because the whole point of School Desk is to provide scheduling information and generate a schedule automatically for a homeschool family. And so if you're not putting in any tasks in here, and all of these things before tasks are prerequisites for it, then what are you doing? Similarly, if you're only building a school year and you never actually create a student and never connect it to the school year, also, what are you doing? You're kind of playing around with the scheduler, but you're not really, in my opinion, going to be a serious candidate for the app. And this is true of the people that have actually signed up and paid for them. There's really clear candidates of, okay, you're putting in a lot of information into the app. It's much more likely that you're going to sign up and actually start paying for the service. So what I want to do is take this page and this information, and I want to go to the data behind it and actually filter on some of it and make this page a lot more concise. Because what I see, like I said, the production site that I see has dozens of these over the 60-day window that people can have for their trials. And of those dozens, only a handful are actually, at this stage of the app, really serious contenders for possibly signing up, and people that I might want to reach out to and say, hey, is there anything I can do? Is there anything that the product is missing? I want to highlight those people and not the ones that have just come in and abandoned the app. So what we're going to do is go over to this code that is generating this data table, and we'll annotate it, and we'll put on a bit of context data that will say, who is a tire kicker and not. I'm going to make that determination based on two factors. It'll be, you have to have at least one of all of these numbers. The other thing that I want to consider as a tire kicker is how long they've had the chance. So if someone has only been in the app for a day, it's possible that they might still be a tire kicker, or they might not. Maybe they just haven't had the time to enter the data in yet. So I think I want to give people who are in the app for the first week the benefit of the doubt. Say like, no, there's still a chance you might actually put some stuff in here and become a real interesting person to follow. So I think those are the two kind of criterion that I want to use. And what we'll do is we'll add that data to the context. It'll help us to show whether to render this information or not. Success on this particular view is only this high onboard account is the one that should remain after we're done. And then we can add in, I think we can probably also sign up with a new account testing for tire kickers and put in one that is recent, because you can see all of these are quite old. This is from April, March. Like this data in here is rather old, because I on the stream I'm often using this same testing account, and I don't need to create a whole lot of accounts. So why don't we create that test data first and then jump over to the code and take a look. So I'm going to log out, and I'm going to start a free trial here. And create a maybe tire kicker at somewhere.com and give that a password. And this is the experience that you get when you first sign up with the app. I make sure that you have an email confirmation. When I'm doing local web testing, though, I don't send real emails, which is hopefully evident, but I do dump it out to the console. So what we should be able to do is take this link and then go over back to the app and follow this. And good. It does the experience that I want people to have. I want them to be dumped right into the start onboarding flow, and then they can get going. Okay, so that's it for this account. We can now go back to the admin account and take a look at it, and we should see the new account that we just created. We'll go back to, whoops, not the office. We want to go to the dashboard and come back to the funnel. And we've got the maybe tire kicker here. So this is the 28th as of this stream. And so we've got someone who's just today, which is a good kind of baseline for what we have. So now we have representative data of the 3 major scenarios. Well, I guess this scenario is really just a subset. Anyway, I'm getting a little wrapped around the axle and semantics. We have examples of people that we want to save and show and people that we want to ignore. So let's go over to the actual code now and start working on this. We're going to go to, hold on. Well, shoot. Don't worry about that. That's some other code I was working on earlier. Let's go over to the core views, I think is where I put this stuff. And in here, this is not a terribly complicated view. So here's the whole view that we've got. And I didn't even optimize it in any way, shape, or form. As you can see, I've got a bunch of count queries or filtering on all of this data. And I know that this data is correct, so we don't want to change any of that. What we want to do is then, these are user stats, and it's got users. So what I really want to do is I want to add a Boolean here of if this is a tire kicker or not. So what constitutes a tire kicker? Well, I said that it needs to be someone who is beyond a certain age of their account. So that could be someone who's like, let's say more than a week. So if you're more than a week and you still haven't input all the data, it's a pretty good chance you've abandoned the app at this point. So we want that as to be like our threshold. So in fact, let's give it that name. Let's call it the tire kicker threshold. And we want that to be timezone.now plus date time delta of 7 days. So that's 7 days in the future. Or really, is that going to be the right thing? Are we really counting the past? Well, we'll fiddle with this math. I might have this logically backwards in my head, but we'll see. So we want to compare. We only want to consider if someone is a tire kicker if their account is more than 7 days old. So we need to actually consider. Really, okay, I'm getting this comparison backwards. So we have got now, and we've got when the person joined. And my language is getting. I'm trying to think of the variable name that I want to call this. It's not obviously coming to me. So the cutoff we want to consider is and that's what I want to call it. Tire kicker cutoff is probably a better name. And it's relative to the user. So the user has a date joined timestamp, I believe it is. Let me see if we get other examples in the app. Yep, date joined is an attribute that the Django user model adds when someone signs up the first time. So that's the created date. It's what actually shows up in the template. We can also bring up the onboarding template. It's probably in here. Yeah, you can see it right there. So it was one of the pieces of information that I was showing you on this page anywhere. So this created column, it's not the name of the field is not created, it's date joined. So we've got date joined, and then we can say the cutoff is now the rest of this stuff. So it's really what we wanted to put here. So now we've got this cutoff, and this is not really the variable that we want to keep anymore. So we want to compare if the current time is how that compares to the cutoff. So let's calculate the current time outside of the for loop, because there's no reason to calculate that on every iteration of the loop. And so we can say now is equal to timezone.now. So now we've got access to that variable. And we want to say if now is greater than, I think that's right. I might have the less than or greater than backwards, but we'll try it. And this is one of the things. It's like I could figure out the time zone math, but it'd be easier to just see it. So if it's in this category, then this is something that we want to consider. Like you're now an old enough account that we should calculate, are you a tire kicker or not? And for the moment, we'll actually assume, we'll take the default stance that tire kicker, I want to put it in here for all of them. So it's something that we can always depend upon in the context. So we'll say tire kicker, and that's going to be a Boolean. And we'll say it's false by default. Okay. So now we have this information. And what do we need? We need all of these values to be greater than 0. It's not, I was thinking we could just sum them, but there could be like the one that is for example, there's the tasks one, any of them, in fact, could have multiple of you. So somebody could go in there and for some reason create a bunch of school years or create a bunch of grades, but not do the rest. So really, it is about having at least one of each of these, rather than just some summation of all of them, which makes makes this a little bit annoying to calculate, I think. And I'm going to think through if there's a cleaner way to do this. But I think what I want to do is try and put in the stupid version and get it working, and then we can come back and think, like, is there a cleaner way to do this? So we want to say, let's just do it all. It's going to be if user stats, school year. I want to actually see all this information. There it is. School years, okay, I was automatically going to get that wrong, is equal to 0. And, so this is where it's going to be. It's just going to be a bunch of and kind of conditions. In fact, we can preempt and reuse a bunch of code here and put a pass and do a bunch of these. And so this is the format that it's going to look like. And like I said, there's probably smarter ways to do this, and we'll get to that in a second. Like I'm already seeing a way that we could simplify this. This is a lot of repetition, as you might notice. So we want grade levels, courses, tasks, students, and enrollments. And really, it's not about being 0. That's not right. It's about you have to be greater than 0. Nope. Getting this logic wrong. We want to identify a tire kicker. So a tire kicker is where any of those is 0, right? So really, if it's It's not and, it's or. If any of those is 0 and you're past the time, then you're a tire kicker, I think. So at that point, we want to say the user stats, we can set tire kicker is equal to true. Oh, shoot. This was a list. Okay. We needed to give this a local variable. Phooey. So we'll call this whole thing stats. Yep, all right. We'll call this stats. We will outdent that, change this to be appending the stats, and now we'll change these user stats to just be stats. Okay. All right, now we've got the data for an individual. I didn't realize, I thought the user stats was, stats is one of these bad variable names that it could mean a group of things or it could mean an individual because the statistics about one person. Anyway, so we've got the stats for an individual now has this tire kicker. And we should be able to go back in here, and I'm going to start this with the debug toolbar this time because we want to take a look at the context data because I haven't done any work on the template yet. So if we come back in here and refresh this page, might take a while. Nope, not as long as I thought. And let's see if we were even close with the logic. So our maybe tire kicker is false, even though they're all zeros. This one is marked as a tire kicker because it has 0 courses and 0 tasks. That's a tire kicker. So the only one, I think we got it. Cool. So that's good. And then so let's continue to get like the context data right, and we'll go modify the template, and then we'll come back to the view and make sure that the view is accurate. And then we need to run the test suite with coverage to see that if I actually, because I added a new if guard here, and we might need to write a test for it. I don't know. Okay, so coming back to the code, the other thing that I want to be able to do is I do want to know how many tire kickers there were. Like it is valuable to see like what is the ratio of like real to not real people right now. So now that we've calculated tire kickers, we can say we can add to this context dictionary. We'll add the tire kickers tire kicker count, and that's going to be we can do a sum. What's the easiest way to do this? There's a length call. Yeah, okay. Let's do a length call on this for you in user stats if you tire kicker. What's the wrong with the syntax? Oh, closing. Okay. So that should say like anybody that's a tire kicker, we're going to do a list comprehension, and then by the time we're done with that, we can do a length call. There's probably a way that I could do this with a generator and maybe a sum. Yeah, I don't think we need to though. So let's return over here, try refreshing it, And the count that I expect is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 should be the tire kicker count. That should be in the context. Whoop, 4. Why is it 4? Oh, no, sorry. This first one was a maybe tire. They're too new. So yeah, 4 is right. Okay. So let's set the view aside for a minute, and let's come back to the onboarding template itself and just add in the extra information. So we'll say after the table of stats, we'll say a paragraph tag, and is there any real good sized text in here? Let's try it with what this is. Plus tire kicker count, tire kickers. Okay, so that's the count there, and that's good. Now we can give it some. Let's give it a little bit of padding. So we'll say margin Y of 4. That way, it's just not right up to that table. And that's all I will really need, I think. And then the other thing we need to do is we only want to show this if stats, if not stats tire kicker. Okay. And that should just show the 2. Cool. So now we have our code and our template. They're done. Now I could say that that's good enough and just stop. Here's what I don't really care about this is that this is like 2 nested if statements. So we probably simplify that right away. So let's do that first. So let's change this to an and. Like that is this semantically equivalent. The other bit we could do is, what would be fun to do here? I could make this could be an any on a list comprehension. So we could say, does it matter at this point? No, but it's just kind of fun to think about, like, can we make this simpler? Let's say data, what should this be? Data categories is equal to the keys. No, let's not call it categories. Let's just call it keys. Call it closer to what it is. Let's make a list of keys that is the things that we want to compare. Because what I'm looking at here is like the repetition between this is very high. So I'm trying to see if we can eliminate some of that repetition. So if we put all of the things that we want to compare into a list, and then we do an operation that says, for the moment, let's comment this out, because we know that works, in case that this doesn't work. So if any of these comparisons of stats key for key in data keys. So I think this is going to be like equivalent because we're almost is equal to 0. So if any of those are true, then that's going to be the same as doing all of these OR comparisons, or. Because the OR operator short circuits, right? So I think we can get rid of this. We'll continue to have it here just in case I'm wrong for some reason. But I think what this does is it does pretty nicely clean up the comparison, and I believe it should be the equivalent. Whoops. School. Well, I said school keys. That's not right. School years. So the keys still have to be correct. All right, so it's still the same logic, right? Which is good. And now we can delete this. And black still made this longer maybe than I wanted it to be. I wonder if I shorten this, will it go? No. All right, so I'm not going to fight it. So black just sometimes will take a list, and it's better for a diff, but I think in this case, it would have been nice to have it on a single line. But I guess it does make it easy, like in the future, if I do add more pieces of data that I want to constitute what's a tire kicker, then perhaps that's a good structure. Anyway, so we've got this simplified expression. So if any of the things are equal to 0 for all of these things in the statistics, and the person has been around longer than the cutoff period of when they join plus sometime in the future, then we want to consider them a tire kicker. And then we've recorded that, we've shown it in here. The last thing to do on this, before we can file this piece away, is to make sure that there is appropriate test coverage. I have a feeling that this particular line is not going to be touched for the tests that are there, so we might have to write a test. Because in my app, I make it so that I require 100% test coverage. So while we're waiting for the test to actually run, let's go ahead and go over there. I probably have one called onboarding. Yeah, there's no way there's enough data for any of these things. So we basically need to write a test that proves that there's a tire kicker will appear. And I'm almost positive that'll fail. It'll say like one line is missing. Yep, 604, which is this line right here. Exactly the one we thought it would be. So test marks tire kicker. A tire kicker that is not using the app is marked for the context. Okay. So now we need to come in here and we need to use this view. And we've got our user. And this is the user that's actually going to do the logging in. And we need to create, what's going to be the fastest way to do this? The fastest way to do this is going to be to create an enrollment, because the enrollment is going to create a student, and it's also going to create a grade level and a school year. And then from the enrollment, we can create a task, in which will create the course and the task. That's from my knowledge of how the modeling is done for this app. So we'll say enrollment is equal to the enrollment factory, We don't care about the specifics of who it is. And then we can say the course task factory has, this is where we do have to connect it. It has to go to the course, has the grade levels, which is expects a list, and then we can wire it together by saying the enrollment grade level. So that's going to create a task, and in the process, because there's no course, the factory is going to create a course, and that course is going to be wired to the grade level that's associated with the enrollment. And then we want to, I guess, assert on some context. And I guess the easiest way to do this is going to be assert that the tire kicker count is 1. It's going to be 0 because I missed something, which I'll get to in a second, but we'll just write the assertion first. Assert that self get context tire kicker count is equal to 1. Yeah, it's 0. Okay, here's what I missed. Thanks, Stevens. I appreciate that. Appreciate you tuning in too. I missed the fact that remember in this calculation I said you can't be someone that's already in this first week is not going to be considered a tire kicker. So what we need to do is then in the enrollment make sure that the user that we create with at the proper level has a date join that is in the past by a week. So we need let's say tire kicker cutoff time zone now. So we want to put this in the past. What is the Vim add that creates the line? Which line are you talking about, Shivans? The pep line? I got a lot of lines on here. You're gonna have to be a little bit more specific. Sorry. Oh. The vertical line. Okay. I'm seeing like black line, yellow line. Gotcha. That was something I added to my Vim RC. I'll show you in just a second. Let me get this bit of code put down. Let's just say days equal 8, just because that'll be a good time frame for someone that I know is there, and we'll use that variable in a second. If we go to my Vim RC, so let's do a vertical split on my Vim RC, and here we are, my Vim RC, and the line thing that I put in here is, what do they call it? I do use you complete me for suggestions. That's correct. Here it is. So it's the combination of these two things. It's the let color column. So I'm marking column 81 as the, so this is like pure, like really hardcore Python semantics, I guess. Some people, like, although black, you might notice black actually goes over this. I don't know if I have any examples in this file. Like, here's an example. So the black code formatter actually picked 88. And the 88 number apparently comes from some bunch of research at Facebook that says they looked at all their code, all their Python code, and did some comparison on when stuff would wrap when you had the black formatting and versus like when it'd be too long. I don't really know if it was a really truly scientific process, but the black formatter, long and short of it, is they picked 88 as the true maximum. So I have some lines that will go past this column count. But in a more strict setting, which some projects are, they expect you to be like 79 characters or 80 characters, probably 79. So I put mine technically at 81. So really, I've got one character's worth of gutter, I guess, and you can see that with color column here. And then I had to fiddle with the actual color, the color that I wanted to use for my color column. I could do this right now, but I don't really feel like it right now. But you could find this. If you want to look at this stuff and look at my specific vimrc, you totally can. I have this all online at my .files, and you can look at this. So here, I'll drop the link in the chat too, so you have quick access to it. This is all the plugins that I use. I am not super great about commenting every one, so this is it's buried into this. This is probably like if you did some archaeology on what is my vimrc, like this is the oldest stuff. This is the core right here, because bit of history about me. Once upon a time, I did not work in, well, I guess I've always worked in what's considered the private sector, but I used to work for a defense contractor, Lockheed Martin. I didn't make bombs or anything. I was working on satellite software, like GPS and stuff like that. And in those environments, you weren't really especially with I had to go into some classified labs and nothing crazy. It's just stuff that, there are different classifications of stuff. And naturally, when you go into a classified lab, you don't have connection to the internet. Or maybe this is not natural to you. I don't know what country I think you're coming from, somewhere like South Africa or something. So this may be not natural for you at all. In the US, in a classified lab, which is just a signifier for where programming can be done on classified materials, you don't have access to the internet. Or you do, but it's really separated. New Zealand, sorry. I think there was someone else I'm thinking of that was in South Africa. But at any rate, so there was the regular machines that were doing coding in the classified labs, you couldn't connect to the internet, which meant that as a Vim user, I couldn't bring in all of my plugins and all of my stuff. So back then, I memorized basically what lines 81 to 85. I memorized those lines. Those were my original Vim lines. And I didn't bother commenting it because I committed it all to memory. At some point, though, I left defense contracting and got into education technology for a site called Storybird, which was teaching kids to write English. And I started to expand my vimrc, and at some point I realized I should probably start commenting and documenting, and I got much better about this in the future. So there's this dark spot that I don't know why I've never gone back and actually made this readable to anybody, but the rest of this is pretty well commented if you want to use it. Okay, that was a little tangent. Hopefully that was helpful for you. All right, cool, very good. All right, so what I was missing is the cutoff. So we want to go into this enrollment now and dig into the student. And no, not the student, the actual user, the admin of the school year. So this is going to be a funky factory path to follow. So the enrollment tiers up and it has a grade level. That's the thing above it. Let's just look at the model diagram so we can all see, so you're not just taking my word for it. Come on, zoom. There we go. So at the base of this all, I was going to miss one anyway, is the user. This is what the thing we want to care about, to say are you a tire kicker or not? The enrollment, though, that we created to have all the necessary data is way up here. So there's quite a tree that it has to traverse to get down to the actual user. So we need to go user to school year to grade level to enrollment. Okay, so at the factory level, that's going to translate to user grade level, school year, school. Thankfully, my autocomplete is filling in this for us. And then we can say admin, and then date joined is tire kicker cutoff. Hopefully all that works. There's a chance that the date joined field is an auto add now. We might have to save it after the fact, but we'll try this first. Hey, passed. Cool. So that was right. So we're taking deep advanced knowledge of this structure to make this shorter than it might otherwise be. So we've got an assertion that we're going in here that gives me confidence that we've hit this true line. And now we can do one last test of coverage, and that should prove that we got the line. So I think this will be pretty useful for me as like the administrator to know who to reach out to, because I have gone out and just as a way to engage with potential customers, looked at folks that have said that I've clearly seen indicators of you have used the app quite a bit, and sent them a cold email saying like, hey, I'm the actual person. This is not some big corporate site. It's just I'm a guy that's making a service for my family that I'm extending to other people. And that's been pretty well received from some of the people that I've seen. So that it's a good way to potentially help them convert into actual paying users. Ah, sweet. Everything's working. And 500 tests. I've got one failed. So the thing that I worked on last week, I don't know if any of you saw the stream. We're working through a weird scheduling bug. I have the test that proves the weird scheduling bug, but I haven't had time to fix it. And so I committed that as an X fail to say I'll come back to it. But I didn't want to delete the test, and I didn't want to have to deal with that in my Git diffs for this stream. So it's committed. Got our new test that proves that there's a tire kicker. We refactored the stats to pull it out of the list directly. And so we have per user. And then we do a comparison on the cutoff period. And if any of these do not have data, then we add that to our stats, and then we get the count as well. In the template, we only dump out the user if they're not a tire kicker, and then we list the count of tire kickers. So that's the feature. And I will say filter tire kickers. All right. Let's see, we've got 52 minutes according to my stream manager, although I started a little earlier than that, so that timing is a little different. What else can we do? I was talking to my spouse, who is the primary customer of my app, and the next thing I think I want to work on is going to be more involved. And this is one where it's kind of like changing, making changes to the engine mid-flight, which is always fun. So let's look at the model diagram for a second. I modeled, so getting back to like the core of how the app works, there is a schedule. Whoops. Let's actually look at it. There's a schedule, and the schedule is dynamically created. And I've described in the past that it goes by indices of like what to look up for the table within the different database tables to pull out tasks to display. Part of that, though, is with this model of always dynamically building, you have to be able to fill in the holes. So if you go on Christmas or pick your holiday, Hanukkah, I don't know, whatever your religion is, or if you're not religious, just your patriotic Independence Day for your country, I don't care. There are days where your family would take days off, and I didn't want it to force tasks onto that day and for the users not to be able to do anything. So one of the features of the application is to set your holidays or set your break days. It doesn't have to be for a holiday. It could be for any reason. Maybe you have to go to the dentist and your kids aren't going to do school, whatever. And here's an example of one of these break days. The breaks are in here as a start and end, so it can be multiple, and they can optionally put in a description. One of the features requested by my spouse is an ability to put in field trips. And as I was thinking about what a field trip really is, it, in a bunch of circumstances, most circumstances maybe, is really just a break day with a different coat of paint on it to say like it's for school, but it's still not doing school in the same kind of way, not doing traditional classroom work, I guess. But there was a problem with my current modeling of school breaks. And that problem is that the school breaks assume that it's for your entire school. So I've got 2 children in my house. This week is actually a great example. My daughter happens to be going to dance camp this week. My son went to tennis camp a few weeks ago. And while one of them is away at one of these particular camps, the other one's actually doing school. So the way that this is currently modeled in the system as a break, my spouse can't actually put this in as a break because it would prevent my son from doing any work, because it just kind of fills up the schedule for both students. And so that brings about the need to be able to make breaks specific to the actual students. And in practice, it's very natural to want to split them out this way, because if we go back to the week schedule, there's always a separation in how I'm displaying the schedules for the week. There's one student and then there's another. So this is my son, this is my daughter. And so it makes sense that I could say all of these could be marked as a break for my daughter, and then my son could still continue to do his work. This isn't my son's real schoolwork. This is junk data. But those are my kids' names. So I need to update the modeling of this school break to factor in students. And I think what that's going to do is going back to that school year page and looking at the particular break, there's going to be some interesting implications here. If I model with a student, then what does it mean to edit a break here? What's going to have to change about this form in particular is we're at minimum going to have to show here are all your students. The other thing that we would have to do is, well, there's a bunch of things, scenarios that pop up with this actually. Yeah, let's start writing down like the different use cases for this. So the core goal is make it possible to schedule breaks per student. That's the goal. And then we can write down the different kind of use cases that we can think of what we'll have to fix. So make school breaks work per student. Now, what I don't want to do is, if my family goes on vacation, I don't want to make it so that my wife has to put in the same break twice, once for each student. You can imagine an even bigger family, and there are lots of large homeschooling families out there, a family with 8 kids. That would be horrible if you're going on a family vacation and whoever is the educator in the house has to put in the breaks for each of their kids. That would be terrible. So one of the requirements is that it has to be a unified view of school break editing. Which translates to some checkboxes. So checkboxes per student. The other thing that's going to have to happen, so that's at the user layer. That's what the user will have to experience. The implementation layer is different. Or well, there are a couple ways we could do this. Let's think through some options. The option I'm most likely leaning towards is a foreign key to the student model for a school break. That's what I'm most. That was the default path that popped into my head. But as I am sitting here, thinking there are other ways to do this. Another way to do this would be to use some kind of unstructured data. And we could say that how else could we do this? Because the implication of this is of having a foreign key is to a school break is like if you have a unified model, then you'd get even on a shared. So a shared break would create 2 school breaks, one for each student. One, I'm assuming 2 students here in my example, would create X school breaks, 1 for each student with X total. That's horribly stated, but I think you get the idea that it would multiply that way. That's one kind of modeling. The other way we could do this is, and I don't know if it's any better. It could be better. Would be to have a many-to-many relationship here. Let's talk it out. Many-to-many. What would that look like? So that would give you the ability to create. This is actually sounding better to me as I'm writing it out. It would be 1 school break. So you'd still get that single interface. But if you had the checkboxes, it could have, I don't know what the other things would be called, a school break, student, or a student school break maybe. The advantage of that is that if you did that, you only have to update a single instance. So let's say the standard case where you're going on family vacation, and both of my kids are going on vacation. We want to mark 1 school break, and my wife adds a description and says going to the beach, something. We're not actually big beach people, but we're going somewhere. And then just trying to think about the editing case of what that would look like. If we had just this modeling right here with a foreign key, then if she changed it, so we're going to a beach in New Jersey or something like that, then like it would have to go in and create and modify the text, the description text of each school break. With the many-to-many relationship instead, then there would be one place to edit. It's more normalized, and that's a good thing. But there are some downsides to this approach. So to its credit, this is it's a more normalized than a foreign key. There's only one place to edit a description, for instance. The downside of this is that I think it's going to be a little harder to query. So I'm going to have to change like a bunch of the APIs in my app right now. So right now I'm checking, I go in the code. Let's look at some code rather than me talking through it. Let's look at the school models. I think that's where it is. Attached to the school year is this method right now, is break. And is break is great when breaks are global to an entire school or an entire school year, as they are currently modeled right now. What this does is, you can see this is the interface. It's returning a Boolean, and it checks if the school year has a break for that day. And this school breaks by day is a filter where it goes and looks at all the school breaks on the school year, because breaks are attached to a school year specifically. Now, you can see where this is going to break down, because what is a break to my son versus my daughter might vary, and in a future where we have this ability to split on a student. The part that I'm a little hesitant on is the many-to-many might complicate this. It's like we might have to not only look up the breaks for the school year, but also have a separate lookup table onto all the many-to-many. Maybe that's not so bad. Maybe that's actually very handleable. Because what's going to have to change about this at minimum is the isBreak method is going to have to like expect a student. And it either will have to expect a student or just assume that any break will suffice, which I think is going to be a pretty bad assumption a lot of times. Maybe not. So this API is going to have to change in some way, so that when the schedule is being built, because it does calculate and factor in this isBreak stuff, that student is part of that calculation. So I think this might be where I want to leave this tonight. So this is what we're going to be working on. And frankly, I haven't had a lot of time to work on School Desk outside of the stream. So it's very likely that we'll pick right up here next time on the stream. I will give a good think on whether I prefer this pure foreign key approach or the many-to-many. Now that I've kind of talked it through, I might be convincing myself of the more normalized approach with the many-to-many, because that might be easier to manage in the long run and just better database modeling overall. Outside of this particular database modeling, so what are some other challenges that come about because of this? This is a modeling that, if at minimum we went with a foreign key, attaching a student foreign key to the school break model, in that scenario, we would actually want to have the student be a mandatory key. You would not want that to be nullable. You would expect there always to be a break associated with at least one student. And because the site is already live and there already are existing breaks, you can't just add that as a non-nullable and expect it to work, because the migration would not have the necessary data to fill that in. I mean, I could go in there and write a data migration that pulls the first student, but that wouldn't be accurate, because right now the assumption is that breaks apply to a whole family. So I would have to go in there and make the migration, do a data migration that would include all of one school break per student at that time. And so that's possible, but there's just migration considerations that would have to be considered for this kind of change. And it's the kind of challenging stuff that happens when you have real data thinking through how to migrate safely is actually a pretty big problem. And this is not a unique problem to Django, just to be clear. This is a problem for any web application. But knowing some of the patterns and things you have to consider as you go through that process is useful, and something that I've done a fair amount of. So we'll have to consider a plan here and work through that. The interesting part about this as well, if I go to the many-to-many handling, is going to be, I think there's fewer database modeling constraints there and migration constraints, but there will be interesting stuff for, what do you do when somebody unchecks all of the students? Can they do that? Can they be allowed to do that? Or are they going to have, is an expectation that they will always have at least one checked, and all sorts of stuff like that. So we're going to work through that and make this happen. And from there, so once we get school breaks, this is kind of the phase one, is make it possible to make school breaks appropriate per student. And then the next phase beyond that is to put that new coat of paint on there and make it possible to identify those as a field trip. Maybe that might mean like connecting it to a particular course. I'm not really sure what my spouse is looking for. She's the one kind of as a product representative, or my customer who's driving that. So once I have this capability, I can return to this conversation with her about what does it look like to be a field trip and how's that going to work. So I think that's kind of the next half of this project is making that all work and fit into the product and fit nicely, and give nice places to add in field trips and make that something that can be reported on, and a really interesting part of this whole process. That's my plan. I will take this content and post it up on YouTube like I usually do in case you missed anything and want to check it out. Appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't already, please follow. Follow, is that the right word on here on Twitch? I can never remember. Like, subscribe, comment, follow, whatever the thing is you're doing, wherever you're catching this. Appreciate that. And with that, I want to wish you all good night. Take care.